Marcus Blackwood had not prayed since the VA hospital in 1973, but every morning at 6 he talked to his dead wife while rebuilding motorcycles that would never run as good as they should. Some men talk to God. Marcus talked to ghosts. It was almost the same thing. The October dawn came cold through the grimy windows of his custom shop in Duluth, Minnesota. 43 miles north, in a drainage pipe under the Blatnick Bridge, an 11-year-old boy was waking to the same cold. Neither man nor boy knew the other existed. In 14 hours, their lives would become inseparable. Marcus stood at his workbench, hands black with grease, working on a 1947 Harley Knucklehead that had been dead for longer than his marriage. The engine block sat before him like an altar. Each bolt he turned was a prayer, each adjustment a confession. His hands were thick from 20 years of this work, scarred knuckles, permanent grease under the nails. These were not soft hands. These were not hands that asked for mercy. They were hands that built things, fixed things, held things together when everything else was falling apart. Sarah's coffee mug sat on the shelf above the bench. 6 years of dust on the rim. He had not washed it since the morning she died. Every day he poured himself coffee and stared at that mug and remembered the last time she drank from it. "I'm trying, baby," he said to the photograph beside the mug. Sarah smiled back at him, frozen at 32, forever young, forever gone. "God knows I'm trying." The trying was all he had left. $23,247 in cash sat hidden in Sarah's old toolbox. 3 years of saving, every overtime shift, every extra bar, every sacrifice that made his bones ache and his hands shake at the end of long days. He needed $60,000 for Sophie's heart surgery. At this rate, he would have it in 4 more years. Sophie had 2 years, maybe 3. The math did not work. It never worked. But Marcus kept trying anyway because trying was better than the alternative. The alternative was giving up. And men like Marcus Blackwood did not know how to give up. They only knew how to break. He had broken once before. The memory came unbidden, the way bad memories always do. The hospital room 6 years ago. The doctor with eyes that had seen too much death. The choice no man should have to buy two. We can save one, not both. 5 words that destroyed his world. Marcus had chosen. He chose the baby. He chose Sophie. And Sarah had smiled at him with blood on her lips and said the last words he would ever hear from her. "Promise me you'll give her everything." "I promise, my hon. Promise me she'll know she's loved." "I promise." Sarah's hand went cold in his 4 seconds later. His heart stopped beating for those same 4 seconds. It only started again because a newborn baby screamed in the room down the hall. That scream was the only thing that kept him alive. For 6 years, he had kept those promises. He gave Sophie everything he had. He made sure she knew she was loved. He braided her hair every morning, even though the first 47 attempts looked like bird nests. He read to her every night. He worked himself to exhaustion to save money for the surgery that would keep her alive. But trying was not the same as succeeding. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and walked to the window. The sky outside had turned the color of a bruise, purple and black and swollen with something ugly. The air tasted wrong. Metallic. The way it tasted before thunderstorms in Vietnam, before the mortars started falling, before good men died in mud. His knee was screaming, the old injury from the Sturgis crash in '87. He had learned to read weather through pain. Right now, the pain was telling him something bad was coming. He checked his watch, 6:45. Sophie would be waking up soon at his mother's house. Margaret had taken her for Halloween. The plan was simple. Margaret would drive Sophie home by noon, well before any snow started falling. The forecast said 6 to 8 inches starting at 4 in the afternoon. Nothing serious, nothing Margaret could not handle. But Marcus's knee disagreed with the forecast, and Marcus had learned to trust his knee more than he trusted meteorologists. He reached for the phone, dialed his mother's number. It rang 3 times before she picked up. "Marcus? Mom, how's Sophie?" "Still sleeping. We made cookies last night, chocolate chip. She ate 4 before bed." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "That's my girl." "How are you?" The question carried weight. His mother always asked it that way. Not casual, careful. The way you ask someone who might break if you push too hard. "I'm fine." "Liar," Marcus said nothing. His mother had earned the right to call him a liar. She had buried her husband. She had buried two of her three sons. She had earned the right to see through his bullshit. "The storm looks bad, Mom. My knee is bad." Margaret was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. The voice of a woman who had survived the blizzard of 1940 that killed 14 people in St. Louis County. "I'm keeping her." "What?" "Sophie, I'm keeping her here until this passes. I don't like how the sky looks. I don't like how my knee feels. And there hasn't been a single chickadee at my feeder all morning." Marcus went cold. When the birds disappeared, something was coming that even creatures without weather reports could sense. "How long?" "I don't know. Could be a day, could be two, but I'm not putting her in that car until this passes." Every instinct in Marcus's body screamed at him to say no, to demand his daughter back, to ride north right now and bring her home where he could see her, touch her, know she was safe. But Margaret was right. She was always right about storms. "Keep her safe," he said. His voice came out tight, strangled. "I always do." The line went dead. Marcus stood holding the phone for a long moment. Something felt wrong, something deeper than weather, something in his gut that had been churning since he woke up. He had felt this feeling before, in the jungle, right before ambushes, right before everything went to hell. He almost called back, almost told his mother to bundle Sophie up and drive south right now before the storm hit. His hand hovered over the phone. But what would he say? "My bones feel strange?" She would laugh at him. He put the phone down. This decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. 43 miles north, Luca Bennett woke to darkness and cold, and the distant sound of wind that promised death. The drainage pipe under the Blatnick Bridge had been home for 14 months, 4 feet in diameter, 8 feet deep, dry when it did not rain. Hidden from police and social workers and other homeless people who might hurt an 11-year-old boy for his stolen sleeping bag. Lucas lay perfectly still in the darkness, listening. Wind outside, getting louder, the metallic scrape of snow beginning to fall, and something else, something that sounded like a little girl crying, carried on the wind from some impossible distance. He sat up, his breath fogged in the freezing air. The newspaper stuffed in his boots had frozen overnight. 3 layers of the Duluth News-Tribune, just like his mother had taught him. Newspaper traps air, baby. Air traps warmth. Emma Bennett had been dead for 4 years. Lucas still heard her voice every morning. He pulled on the boots. The cracked leather was stiff with cold. The left boot had a hole near the toe. The right boot had a sole that flapped when he walked. He had stolen them from a dumpster behind a Goodwill 8 months ago. Before that, he had worn shoes 2 sizes too small that made his toes bleed. These boots were ugly, but they worked. And on the streets, working was all that mattered. Lucas crawled to the entrance of his pipe and looked out at the world. The sky was the color of a corpse, gray and purple and sick with something terminal. Snow was already falling, even though it was only 7 in the morning and the forecast had said afternoon. Fat flakes, heavy flakes, the kind that meant business. Birds were fleeing south in waves. Blackbirds and crows and even the gulls from the harbor. Thousands of them, darkening the sky, running from something Lucas could not see but could feel in his bones. He had learned to read omens on the streets. When the birds run, you run too. But Lucas had nowhere to run to. He took inventory. 2 cans of beans, 1 box of matches in a Ziploc bag, his mother's photograph in another Ziploc, a knife he had found in a parking lot, the sleeping bag he had stolen from a camping store 2 months ago. He remembered that theft, remembered walking into the store looking like any poor kid, remembered his heart pounding as he walked out with the bag stuffed under his coat. He had felt bad about it for almost an hour. Then the first frost came, and guilt seemed less important than not dying. Survival simplified morality. It stripped away questions of right and wrong and left only one question. Will this keep me alive until tomorrow? Lucas looked at the sky and asked himself that question now. The storm coming was not normal. Even he could see that. This was not 6 to 8 inches. This was the end of the world rolling in early, ahead of schedule, hungry for whatever it could catch. He should stay in the pipe, should burrow into his sleeping bag and wait it out. should save himself. But something pulled at him, something in the wind, something in that distant crying he swore he could hear. Lucas Bennett had survived 2 years on the streets by trusting his instincts. His instincts had kept him fed, had kept him hidden, had kept him alive when other kids like him ended up dead in alleys or frozen in snowbanks. Right now, his instincts were telling him two contradictory things. Stay here and live. Go out there and find what's calling. He thought about his mother, about her last words. Everything will be okay, baby, I promise. She had been wrong. Everything was not okay. Everything was cold and hard and cruel. Everything was living in a drainage pipe and stealing food and being invisible to a world that did not care if he lived or died. But maybe somewhere out in that storm, someone needed him. Maybe someone needed him the way he had needed someone 4 years ago when his mother died and no one came. Lucas pulled his sleeping bag tighter around his shoulders, made his decision, started stuffing his few possessions into a plastic garbage bag. If he was going out there, he was going prepared. He did not know that 9 miles away, a 6-year-old girl was about to need him more than anyone had ever needed anyone. He did not know that keeping her alive would require him to break his body in ways that would never fully heal. He did not know that this decision would change thousands of lives. He only knew one thing. Something out there was calling, and for the first time in 2 years, Lucas Bennett was going to answer. Margaret Blackwood had survived 67 Minnesota winters. She knew cold, she knew snow, she knew death. And standing at her kitchen window at 9 in the morning on October 31st, 1991, watching the first flakes fall 6 hours early, she knew this storm was going to kill people. "Grandma, look! Snow!" Sophie pressed her face against the window. Her breath fogged the glass. Outside, the world was already turning white. The flakes were not gentle, they were not playful, they fell with purpose, with weight, with the certainty of avalanches. Margaret's right knee was screaming, not the usual ache, a shriek, a howl, pain she had felt only twice before in her life, both times before storms that killed people. She moved to Sophie and pulled her gently away from the window. "Come away, sweetheart." "But the snow is so pretty. Can we play in it?" "Not today, baby." Sophie's face fell. She was 6 years old, and with her mother's impossible green eyes and her father's stubborn chin, she was too smart for her age. Already knew she was sick. Already knew the medications she took every morning were keeping her heart beating in a rhythm it did not want to keep. Why not? Because Grandma says so. It was the answer Margaret's own mother had given her 60 years ago. The answer that meant stop asking questions and trust me because I have lived longer and seen more and know things you do not know yet. Sophie accepted it the way children accept gravity, without understanding, but with faith. Margaret went to the phone and called Marcus again, told him she was keeping Sophie, heard the fear in her son's voice when he agreed, hung up before he could change his mind. For 3 hours, everything was fine. Margaret baked cookies with Sophie, chocolate chip and peanut butter. They played cards by the fireplace. They talked about the special tree behind the house where Sarah used to play, where Marcus had proposed 23 years ago, where Sophie's mother had dreamed about the children she would never live to raise. Then at 4:17, the power went out. The lights died. The heater stopped. The silence that followed was broken only by wind that screamed like something wounded and angry and hunting. Margaret had lived through the blizzard of 1940. She knew what that wind meant. She moved quickly, built the fire in the wood stove higher, wrapped Sophie in quilts, pulled every blanket and coat from the closets. But the temperature kept dropping. By 5, it was 15 below zero outside. By 6, Margaret could see her breath in the kitchen, despite the wood stove burning at full blast. By 7, she knew they were in trouble. By 11:43, Sophie started to shake, not shiver, shake, her whole body convulsing under 3 quilts, her teeth chattering so hard Margaret could hear them from across the room. Margaret lunged from her chair and pressed her hand to Sophie's forehead. Ice cold. "Sophie, Sophie, baby, wake up." "I'm here, Grandma." "I know you are. I'm right here." "My chest hurts." Margaret's blood turned to ice water. The heart. The cold was stressing Sophie's damaged valve, pushing it past its breaking point. The medications could only do so much. They could not fight this kind of cold. Sophie needed warmth. She needed a hospital. She needed help. Margaret had none of these things. Phone lines dead. Road buried under 4 feet of snow. Nearest neighbor 3 miles away. Truck dead since 1987. She did the only thing she could. She pulled Sophie to the floor in front of the wood stove and wrapped her own body around her granddaughter's small frame. Kin to skin, body heat, the most primitive medicine in the world. Stay with me, baby. Stay with Grandma. I'm so cold. I know, but you're going to be okay. Grandma's got you. But even as she said it, Margaret felt the pauses in Sophie's heartbeat growing longer, felt the shaking that would not stop, felt death walking closer with every second. She had buried her husband. She had buried 2 sons. She could not bury a granddaughter. Please, Margaret whispered into the howling darkness. Someone help us. Anyone, please. 23 miles north, Lucas Bennett was pulling on his newspaper-stuffed boots. He had heard something in the wind. Something that sounded like a little girl crying. At midnight, Margaret made a decision that should have killed them both. She was going to drive. The plan was insane. She knew it was insane. The storm had been raging for 8 hours. The snow was waist deep. The visibility was 0. The temperature was 40 below, with wind chill. But Sophie's lips were turning blue. Her breathing was shallow. Her heart was failing. Staying meant watching her granddaughter die in her arms. Driving meant maybe, possibly, if God was merciful, reaching help before it was too late. Maybe beat, certainly. Margaret bundled Sophie in every blanket in the house, wrapped her like a mummy, carried her to the garage. The walk was 50 feet. It felt like 50 miles. The car was a 1984 Buick LeSabre, older than Sophie, less reliable than Hope, but it was all Margaret had. She put Sophie in the back seat, whispered prayers she had not spoken since her husband died, got behind the wheel. The key turned. The engine coughed. Died. Again. Cough. Die. Please, please, please. Third time the engine caught, rumbled to life. Thank you. Thank you. Margaret put the car in reverse, backed out of the garage into a world that had ended while she was inside. She could not see 5 feet ahead. The headlights reflected off a wall of white and showed her nothing. The windshield wipers could not keep up with the snow. It covered the glass faster than they could clear it. She drove blind. 5 miles per hour, maybe less, creeping forward into nothing. Highway 41 was somewhere ahead. If she could find it, if she could stay on it, if she could make it to Duluth. Too many ifs. But Margaret had survived 67 years by betting on long odds. She would bet on them again, mile 1, mile 2. Sophie was crying in the back seat, soft whimpers, the sound of a child who knew something was terribly wrong, but did not have words for what it was. We're almost there, baby. Just hold on. Mile 3, the road curved left. Margaret did not see it. The car did not turn. It went straight, off the road, into the ditch, front end burying itself in a snowbank. Margaret's head hit the steering wheel. Hard. Light exploded behind her eyes, then darkness, then nothing. In the back seat, Sophie whispered into the silence, "Grandma, Grandma, please wake up." Nobody answered. Nobody could. The storm howled. The car settled deeper into the ditch. Steam rose from the hood and was torn apart by wind. And 23 miles north, Lucas Bennett was walking blind through the white void. Walking with no destination. Walking because something was calling him. Walking toward a car he did not know existed. Toward a girl he had never met. Toward a promise that would cost him everything. Lucas had been walking for 2 hours when he saw the shape. Dark against the endless pale. A mass. A form. Something that was not snow. He approached carefully. The wind screamed. The cold bit through every layer he wore. His feet had gone numb 30 minutes ago. He walked by faith now, trusting his legs to keep working even though he could not feel them. The shape resolved into a car. Buried front end first in a ditch. Thin gray smoke rising from under the hood. Lucas's first thought was shelter. Get out of the wind. His second thought was danger. Cars and ditches could mean drunks. Could mean people who would hurt an 11-year-old boy for his boots. He circled to the driver's side window, wiped snow from the glass. Inside, an old woman slumped against the steering wheel. Gray hair, blood on her forehead. Her chest rose and fell, barely, but moving, alive. Then he heard it, a voice from the back seat, small, terrified, breaking. Hello? Is someone there? Please help. Please. Lucas's heart stopped. There was a child in that car. He moved to the rear window, looked inside. A girl, maybe 6 years old, huddled under blankets, face pale as death, lips turning blue, whole body shaking with tremors that meant hypothermia was setting in. She was running out of time. Lucas looked at his boots, cracked leather, heavy heel. The boots he had taken from a dumpster 8 months ago. He pulled off his left boot. The cold sliced into his foot like a blade made of fire and ice and knives. He gripped the boot by the toe, raised it over his head, slammed the heel into the window. The glass cracked. Again, again, again. On the fourth strike, the window shattered inward. Lucas reached through the broken glass, felt shards cutting his arms, ignored the pain, unlocked the door. Cold air rushed into the car. The girl cried out, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." He pulled open the door and looked at her, really looked at her. She had green eyes, impossible green, the color of life in a world that had gone gray and white and dead. "What's your name?" Sophie. Sophie Blackwood." "Hi, Sophie. I'm Lucas. Can you move?" "My chest hurts." The words hit him like a fist. Chest pain in a child this age in this cold. Bad. Very bad. He looked at the unconscious woman in front. Margaret. Had to be the grandmother. Still breathing. Still alive. But he could not carry 2 people. Could not even lift one adult. But he could carry a child. The nearest hospital was in Duluth. How far? 20 miles? 30? He had no idea. It was impossible. No one could walk that far through a blizzard with a child on their back. But staying meant dying. Both of them. Lucas made his choice in the space of a heartbeat. "Sophie, I need you to listen. Your grandma is hurt, but help is coming. Right now, I need to get you somewhere warm. Can you hold on to my back like a piggyback ride?" "You're going to carry me in the storm?" "Yes. But it's so far," Lucas lied with a steady voice. "I've walked farther. This is nothing. But I need you to hold on tight. No matter what happens, don't let go." Sophie looked at him with eyes too old for her face. Eyes that saw everything. Eyes that saw Lucas was lying. Eyes that saw Lucas would try anyway. "Promise you won't leave me." The words hit him harder than the cold, harder than anything. Lucas thought about his father, about the morning he woke up alone, about the promise that had been shattered so completely it destroyed his ability to believe in promises at all. But this was different. This was not a promise for years. This was a promise for hours. This was a promise to keep someone alive. "I promise," Lucas said, "I will never leave you." Sophie smiled, small, fragile, but real. "Okay, I believe you." Those 3 words changed everything. Lucas wrapped the grandmother in every piece of fabric he could find in the car, every blanket, every coat, every scarf. He tucked them around her carefully. "I'll send help back for you, ma'am." Margaret did not respond, but her chest kept rising, kept falling, kept fighting. Lucas turned to Sophie, lifted her onto his back. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her legs around his waist, like a koala, clinging. She weighed almost nothing, 60 pounds of dying child. She felt like the whole world. Lucas faced the darkness. The white void, the storm that had killed 23 people and was hunting for more. He could not see his destination, did not know the exact distance, only knew the direction. Forward, 1 foot in front of the other. Again, 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 the rhythm of survival. He took his first step carrying Sophie Blackwood on his back. He did not know what this promise would cost him. He did not know he would fall 17 times. He did not know he would break his body in ways that would never fully heal. He only knew one thing. He had made a promise. And for the first time in his life, Lucas Bennett intended to keep one. Behind them, Margaret's car disappeared into the white. Ahead, 9 miles of hell waited. And in Duluth, Marcus Blackwood paced his empty house and prayed to his dead wife and wondered why he felt like his world was ending. The storm howled. The snow fell. 3 lives moved toward collision. And in 14 hours, a homeless boy would teach a broken man what it meant to be a father. Mile 1 belonged to Hope. Lucas would remember later that the first mile was the easiest. The weight on his back was manageable. Sophie had wrapped herself around him like a small animal seeking warmth. Her arms locked around his neck. Her legs cinched tight around his waist. The wind was brutal, but Lucas had faced wind before. The snow was deep, but Lucas had waded through deep snow before. The cold was savage, but Lucas had survived savage cold before. One foot in front of the other, again. The rhythm of survival, the only rhythm he had known for 2 years. Sophie's breath was warm against his neck, the only warmth in the entire frozen universe. Her small voice cut through the howling wind. "Lucas? Yeah. Are we going to die?" The question hit him like a physical blow, not because it was unexpected. He had been asking himself the same thing, but because of how calmly she asked it. Like she was asking about the weather, like she had already accepted that the answer might be yes. "No, we're not going to die." "How do you know?" "Because I promised I wouldn't leave you, and I can't keep that promise if I'm dead." A pause, then impossibly a small laugh. "That's weird logic." "Weird logic is still logic. My daddy says that too." "Tell me about your daddy." Sophie's voice brightened despite the cold, despite the danger, despite everything. "He's big, really big, and he has a motorcycle, and he wears leather and has tattoos, and people think he's scary, but he's not. He's the nicest person in the whole world." Lucas smiled despite everything, despite the cold seeping into his bones, despite the weight growing heavier with every step. "He sounds nice. He braids my hair every morning. Did you know boys can braid hair?" I did not know that. Neither did he. He learned from YouTube. Grandma says his first braids look like bird nests. Lucas laughed, actually laughed. This dying girl on his back was making him laugh in the middle of a blizzard. "Do you have a daddy, Lucas?" The question was innocent. The pain it caused was not. "I used to." "Where did he go?" "I don't know." "He didn't tell you?" "No." Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made Lucas's throat close. "That's mean." "Yeah, it was. My daddy would never do that. He promised he'd always be there. He promised on Mommy's grave." Lucas said nothing. What could he say? That promises get broken? That fathers leave? That the world was cruel and cold and did not care about the promises made to children? He just kept walking. Mile 2 stole his feet. Lucas had been expecting it. The newspaper in his boots had soaked through in the first 20 minutes. The cold crept in gradually, starting at his toes, working up to his ankles, finally settling into a solid block of nothing from the knees down. He could not feel his steps anymore, could only watch his legs punch through the snow and trust they would keep working. This was dangerous. Frostbite could set in within minutes at these temperatures, but stopping meant dying. So Lucas kept walking. "Lucas?" "Yeah, boss. I'm really cold." The words sent ice through his veins, not the ice of the storm, the ice of fear. He reached back to adjust her position. Her skin was cold, too cold. "I know, Sophie, but we have to keep moving. Moving keeps us warm." "Okay." But her arms around his neck were looser now. Her grip on his waist was slipping. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Lucas remembered something he had heard at the shelter 2 winters ago. When a hypothermic person stops shivering, it means their body has given up trying to generate heat. Sophie had stopped shivering. Mile 3 broke something inside him. Lucas started crying. He did not notice at first. The tears froze on his cheeks almost instantly, turning to ice that cut like glass. But the sobs shook his chest, stole his breath, made each step harder than the last. He was crying for Sophie, who might not survive this. He was crying for himself, who probably would not survive this. He was crying for his mother, who had promised everything would be okay and then left him alone in a world that proved her wrong. He was crying because he was 11 years old, and he was going to die in a snowstorm with a stranger's child on his back, and no one would ever know what happened to him. No one would ever know he had tried. The tears kept coming. He could not stop them, did not try to stop them, but his feet kept moving. Sophie's voice came soft against his shoulder. Lucas, are you crying? He could not lie to her. Not now. Yeah. It's okay to cry. My daddy cries sometimes. He thinks I don't know, but I do. He cries when he looks at pictures of mommy. Lucas's chest hitched. This 6-year-old girl was comforting him. This dying child was telling him it was okay to feel. Your daddy sounds like a good man. He is. He's the best daddy in the whole world. I bet he's looking for you right now. You think so? I know so. A daddy like that doesn't stop looking. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that Lucas would remember for the rest of his life. When we get home, will you meet him? Yeah, Sophie, I'll meet him. If we get home, he thought. If we survive. If I don't fail you the way everyone else failed me. Mile 4 brought ghosts. Lucas saw his mother. She stood in the snow ahead of him, clear as day, wearing the blue dress she had worn to church every Sunday, smiling the smile she saved just for him, looking exactly as she had before the tuberculosis hollowed her out and turned her into something fragile and gray. Baby, she said, her voice carried over the wind as if the storm did not exist. You're so tired. Why don't you rest? I can't, Mama, I promised. Emma Bennett tilted her head, the way she used to when Lucas was small and said something that amused her. Promises get broken, baby. You know that better than anyone. Not this one. Why is this one different? Lucas thought about the question, really thought about it. The cold gave him plenty of time to think. Because she's counting on me, because no one else is coming, because if I stop, she dies. His mother's smile turned sad. You might die anyway. I know. Is she worth dying for? A stranger's child? Lucas looked at Sophie on his back, could not see her face but could feel her small body trembling, could feel her heart beating against his spine, could feel her trust in him, complete and absolute and terrifying. Yeah, she is. Why? The answer came from somewhere deep, somewhere Lucas had not known existed until this moment, because someone should have been worth dying for me, and no one was. Emma's image flickered, faded. The snow swallowed her whole, but her voice lingered, carried on wind that sounded almost like love. I'm proud of you, baby. I'm so proud. Lucas walked through the space where she had been and did not look back. At 2:15 in the morning, 40 miles south, Marcus Blackwood crashed his motorcycle for the second time. He had been riding for 3 hours. 3 hours of fighting through snow that tried to bury him. 3 hours of wind that tried to throw him off the road. 3 hours of cold that had stolen all feeling from his hands 2 hours ago. The ice patch was hidden under fresh snow, invisible, waiting. The front wheel hit it and slid sideways. Marcus felt the bike going and tried to correct, but the weight was too much and the ice was too slick, and physics did not care how much he needed to reach his daughter. The Harley went down, 800 pounds of steel and chrome and desperation. Marcus went with it, thrown sideways into a ditch. The bike landing on top of him, pinning his leg, the old injury from Sturgis screaming. He lay there in the snow, the bike crushing him, every breath a knife in his ribs, the storm burying him inch by inch. It would be so easy to stay down, so easy to close his eyes, so easy to let the snow cover him like a blanket and drift off into whatever came after this life. So easy to join Sarah in whatever place the dead went. But Sophie was out there, somewhere, and Marcus had made promises to a dying woman 6 years ago. Promise me you'll give her everything. Promise me she'll know she's loved. He had kept those promises for 6 years. He would not break them now. Marcus put his hands in the snow, pushed, his body screamed, his mind screamed, everything screamed. He pushed harder. The bike shifted more, finally fell away from him. Marcus crawled out from under 800 pounds of steel, got his hands under him, got his knees under him, stood. His leg would not hold his weight. He stood on it anyway. Pain was just information he could ignore. He limped to his motorcycle, grabbed the handlebars, pulled it upright through pure force of will, threw his leg over the seat, kicked the engine. It coughed, died again. Cough, Die. Come on, you bastard. Third time. The engine caught, roared to life. Marcus twisted the throttle and rode back onto Highway 41. Rode north, rode toward his mother's house. Rode toward his daughter. Rode toward a debt he did not yet know he owed to a boy he had never met. The storm tried to stop him. Marcus rode through it anyway, because that was what fathers did. They rode through hell for their children. They broke themselves trying. They never stopped. Never. Mile 5 ended Lucas. His legs simply stopped working. One moment he was walking, the next moment he was face down in the snow, Sophie's weight driving him deeper into the white. The cold embraced him like a lover, whispered promises of rest, of sleep, of an end to the pain. It would be so easy to stay down, so easy to close his eyes, so easy to let the storm win. Sophie's voice cut through the fog. Lucas, Lucas, get up. Can't. You promised. The words hit him like a slap across his face. You promised. I promise I will never leave you. Lucas put his hands in the snow. His fingers would not work. He used his palms instead. His forearms. Pushed with everything he had left. His body screamed at him to stop. His mind screamed at him to stop. Every cell in his body screamed that this was impossible, that he had given everything, that there was nothing left to give. Lucas screamed back. He got his knees under him, got his feet under him. Somehow, impossibly, Lucas Bennett stood up. Good, Sophie whispered against his shoulder. Good job. Lucas laughed, or sobbed. He could not tell the difference anymore. Thanks, boss. Let's keep moving. 4 more miles to go. 4 more miles of hell. And then Sophie said 2 words that would echo in Lucas's mind for the rest of his life. I believe you. What? You said we wouldn't die. Her face pressed against his shoulder. Her voice small but certain. I believe you. Lucas's throat closed. This girl, this impossible, dying, stubborn girl, she believed him, trusted him, put her life in his hands without hesitation. He could not fail her, would not fail her. Lucas squared his shoulders, adjusted Sophie's weight on his back, walked into the white void. 4 miles left. He would walk them or die trying. Mile 6 transformed him into something beyond human. Lucas stopped being Lucas. He did not notice the transition. One moment he was an 11-year-old boy carrying a 6-year-old girl through a blizzard. The next moment he was something else, something that existed only to move forward. His feet had stopped mattering miles ago. His hands had stopped mattering around mile 4. His face had stopped mattering when the frost built up on his eyelashes so thick he could barely see. All that mattered was forward. Forward was the only direction, the only thought, the only reality. The wind screamed. Lucas ignored it. The snow clawed. Lucas ignored it. The cold whispered promises of peace, of rest, of eternal sleep in a white bed that would never hurt him again. Lucas ignored it all. He had become a machine, a walking machine, a surviving machine. And machines did not feel. Machines did not fear. Machines just kept running until they broke. Lucas was not broken yet. Mile 7 brought hope like a knife to the chest. Through the wall of white, Lucas saw lights. At first, he thought he was hallucinating again, like the vision of his mother. The cold could do that. When hypothermia set in deep enough, people saw things that were not there. But the lights did not disappear. They flickered in the distance, barely visible through the storm. Yellow lights, warm lights. The kind of lights that meant buildings, that meant people, that meant life. Sophie, Sophie, wake up! She had not responded in over a mile. Her breathing was so shallow Lucas could barely feel it. Her skin had turned grayish, but she was still breathing, still alive, still worth saving. I see lights. Sophie stirred against his back. Her voice came out as less than a whisper. Lucas, yeah, boss. Thank you, Terry. For what? For not leaving me. Lucas's eyes burned, not from the cold, from something else entirely. We're almost there, Sophie. Just hold on. I'm trying. I know you are. You're doing so good. Tommy? Yeah. Will you be my brother? The question came out of nowhere, hit him harder than the wind. harder than the cold, harder than anything the storm had thrown at him. What? When we get home, will you be my brother? I always wanted a brother, and you're nice, and you saved me. Lucas could not speak. The words stuck in his throat, blocked by something that felt like tears and laughter and hope all tangled together. Yeah, Sophie. Yeah, I'll be your brother. Promise, I promise, she smiled against his shoulder. He could feel it even through all the layers, even through the cold and the exhaustion and the pain. Good, I'm going to hold you to that. Then her body went limp, unconscious again, but still breathing, still alive. Lucas walked faster. The lights were maybe 2 miles away, maybe less. 2 miles was nothing. 2 miles was everything. He had walked 7 miles through hell. He could walk 2 more. Mile 8 brought the 17 falls. Lucas had stopped counting somewhere around fall number 10. But his body remembered. 17 impacts, 17 struggles to rise. 17 moments of lying in the snow, wondering if this was finally the end. This time was different. This time he could see the hospital, could see the emergency room entrance lit up like a beacon in the darkness, could see the sliding doors and the ambulances and the promise of warmth and safety and survival. It was maybe 200 meters away. 200 meters might as well have been 200 miles. Lucas lay in the snow, Sophie's weight pinning him down, and felt his body shut down, not gradually, completely. His arms would not move. His legs would not move. His lungs could barely pull in enough air to keep him conscious. He was done. He had given everything, every ounce of strength, every shred of willpower. And it was not enough. 200 meters. That was how close they had come. That was how close Sophie had come to surviving. I'm sorry, Lucas thought. I'm sorry, Sophie. I'm sorry I couldn't get you there. I'm sorry I made a promise I couldn't keep. He closed his eyes. The cold wrapped around him like a blanket. And then Sophie spoke. Lucas. Her voice was barely a whisper, a ghost of a voice. Lucas, please don't stop, please. A pause, a breath. I can see the lights. We're so close. She could see the lights, through the storm, through the frost, through everything. She could see the lights, and she was begging him not to give up. Lucas opened his eyes. The lights were still there, still flickering, still waiting. 200 meters. He had walked 9 miles through a blizzard with a dying child on his back. He had fallen 17 times and gotten up 17 times. He had survived things that should have killed him 10 times over. 200 meters was nothing. 200 meters was everything. Lucas put his hands in the snow. His fingers would not work, so he used his forearms instead. Pushed, his body screamed in protest. He pushed harder. Come on, come on, come on. His knees found purchase. He rose, wobbling, swaying, barely human anymore, but standing. Good job, Sophie breathed. I knew you could do it. Lucas laughed. It came out as a sob, but it was a laugh. Thanks, boss. Let's finish this. 100 meters. He fell again, the 18th time. Got up, the 18th time. 50 meters. His vision was going gray at the edges. His body was shutting down organ by organ. He could feel himself dying with every step. He kept walking, 20 meters. The emergency room doors were right there. Right there, close enough to touch, 10 meters. His knees buckled. He staggered, caught himself, staggered again. 5 meters. He reached the entrance. The automatic doors did not open. The sensors were frozen, or broken, or simply unable to detect the snow-covered creature that used to be a boy. Lucas turned around, pressed his back against the glass, slid down until he was sitting on the concrete. Sophie slipped off his back, landed beside him, still breathing, still alive. For a long moment, nothing happened. The storm howled, the snow fell. Lucas sat there with the girl he had carried 9 miles, waiting for someone to notice them. Then he raised his frozen fist and pounded on the glass, once, twice, 3 times. The doors opened from inside. A woman in scrubs stood there, her face a mask of shock. Oh my God, what? Lucas's voice barely worked, but he forced the words out. Her name is Sophie Blackwood. Her grandma is in a car on Highway 41, mile marker 17. She has a heart condition. She needs help. The nurse stared at him, at Sophie, at the trail of frozen footprints leading from the darkness behind them. Did you, did you carry her here? Lucas did not answer, could not answer. The world was going gray, then black, then nothing. The last thing he heard before consciousness fled was Sophie's voice, weak but alive. He promised he wouldn't leave me. Lucas collapsed on the emergency room floor, and the real fight began. The nurses found the damage when they cut off his boots. His feet were white, not pale, white, the color of tissue that had been frozen solid, the color of death creeping in from the extremities. Get the warming blankets, all of them. They worked on him for 2 hours, warming his core temperature, gradually because warming too fast could cause cardiac arrest, treating the frostbite on his feet, his hands, his face, pumping him full of fluids to replace what the cold had stolen. His temperature when he arrived was 28 degrees Celsius. Normal was 37. He had been 9 degrees from death. Dr. Rivera would say later that Lucas should have died around mile 5. His body simply had not gotten the message. In the room next door, Sophie fought her own battle. The cold had stressed her damaged heart to the breaking point. The arrhythmia had become a full cardiac event. Only the immediate intervention of the trauma team kept her alive. She was stable now. Critical, but stable. Breathing on her own. Her heart limping along on a cocktail of medications. And somewhere on Highway 41, a rescue team found Margaret Blackwood. Unconscious, but alive. Wrapped in every blanket and coat and scrap of fabric that a homeless boy had been able to find in her car. She would survive. They would all survive. Because of one 11-year-old boy who refused to break his promise. At 8:15 in the morning, Marcus Blackwood burst through the hospital doors. He was covered in snow, half frozen, looked like a dead man walking. The nurses tried to stop him, tried to tell him he needed medical attention. He pushed past them all. "Where's my daughter? Sophie Blackwood, where is she?" They pointed. He ran. She was in a bed too big for her small body, surrounded by machines and tubes and monitors that beeped with every heartbeat. Her eyes were closed, her face was pale, but she was breathing. She was alive. Marcus fell to his knees beside her bed and wept. For the first time in 17 years, Marcus Blackwood cried. Real tears, broken sobs, shoulders shaking. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To Gay, to the universe, to whoever was listening. Daddy, the small voice made him look up. Sophie's eyes were open, tired, weak, but open, and the first words out of her mouth were not about herself. Daddy, you have to find the boy. I know, sweetheart, I know. His name is Lucas. He carried me. He promised not to leave me, and he didn't. He fell down so many times, but he always got back up. Sophie grabbed his hand. So small, so fragile, still here because of a stranger's impossible courage. Daddy, you have to find him. He's out there. He's alone. He thinks nobody wants him. Marcus took his daughter's hand, squeezed it gently. I'll find him, Sophie. I swear to you, I'll find him. Promise, I promise, Sophie smiled, the same smile she had given Lucas in the snow, the smile that said she believed. Good. I told him he could be my brother. I hope that's okay. Marcus's heart cracked open. It's okay, baby. It's more than okay. She drifted back to sleep. Marcus stood, wiped his eyes, walked out of the room. He had a promise to keep. And Marcus Blackwood always kept his promises. Lucas woke to warmth. This was wrong. Warmth meant danger. Warmth meant he had been found, been caught, been taken somewhere he did not want to be. His eyes snapped open, his body tensed, ready to run, but his legs would not work. They were wrapped in bandages, elevated on pillows, connected to machines that beeped softly in the quiet room. He was trapped. Easy, son, easy. You're safe. Lucas's head whipped toward the voice. A man sat in the chair beside his bed. The biggest man Lucas had ever seen, 6'4" at least, arms like steel cables, chest like a barrel, face weathered from years of hard living. He wore black leather. Everything was black leather. And on his vest, patches and symbols that Lucas did not recognize but somehow understood. This was a dangerous man. Who are you? Lucas's voice came out as a croak. What do you want? The man leaned forward. His eyes were red, tired, but not angry. Something else. Something Lucas did not have a name for. My name is Marcus Blackwood. Most people call me Frost. Lucas's blood went cold. You're Sophie's father. Yes. The world tilted. Lucas had saved this man's daughter, had carried her 9 miles through hell, and now the father was here, looking at him with eyes that had seen too much, eyes that looked like they could see straight through to all the broken parts Lucas tried to hide. Is she okay? She's alive. Marcus's voice cracked on the word. Because of you. Lucas sagged back against the pillows. Relief flooded through him so powerful it made him dizzy. She was alive. Sophie was alive. The promise had been kept. Good. That's good. I'm glad. Marcus stared at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then slowly, a tear rolled down the man's weathered cheek. You carried her 9 miles through a blizzard that killed 23 people. Lucas said nothing. You gave her everything you had, every ounce of strength, every shred of will. And when you got to the hospital, you collapsed trying to crawl away. Like you thought no one would want you. The tear became 2, 3. Marcus did not wipe them away. Which one? His voice broke. Why would you do that? Risk your life for a stranger? Give everything for a girl you didn't know? Lucas thought about the question, thought about the long walk through the white, thought about Emma's ghost and Sophie's voice and the promise he had made because a 6-year-old girl asked him not to leave her. Because she asked me not to leave her. That's it. That's the only reason. He met Marcus's eyes, held them, spoke the truth he had discovered somewhere around mile 5. Because someone should have done it for me, and no one did. Marcus's face crumpled. More tears fell. He did not try to hide them, did not apologize for them, just let them come. I didn't want her to know what that feels like, Lucas continued, his voice barely above a whisper. To be alone, to be forgotten, to be invisible. Marcus reached out and took Lucas's hand. The grip was gentle, impossibly gentle for such a large man. I know now, I know what you did, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again. Lucas pulled his hand back, the old fear rising, the fear that had kept him alive on the streets, the fear that said trust no one because everyone leaves eventually. You don't have to do that. I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was right. I know. Marcus's smile was sad and fierce at the same time. That's why you deserve one. The social worker is coming tomorrow. Lucas said it flat, matter of fact. I heard the nurses talking. They're going to put me back in the system. No, they're not, Lucas laughed, bitter. That's not how it works. I'm a runaway, a case number. They don't just let kids like me go. Marcus leaned closer. His voice dropped, but the intensity increased. I told them no. You can't just... I told them if they tried to take you, they'd have to go through me. And if they went through me, they'd have to go through every brother in my club, 300 of them. Lucas stared. Why would you do that? Marcus's voice softened. Because my daughter asked me to. She wants you to be her brother. She said she made you promise. Lucas's throat closed. I did promise that, but I didn't think she'd remember. She remembers everything. She remembers you falling 17 times. She remembers you getting up 17 times. She remembers you telling her that slipping means you get up, falling means you don't. Lucas turned away, stared at the ceiling, tried to process what was happening. This made no sense. People did not want him. People left. People forgot. That was how the world worked. I don't understand this, any of it. You, this, someone wanting me, it doesn't make sense. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, full of pain that Lucas recognized because he carried the same pain. When Sarah died, I wanted to die too. The pain was so big, I couldn't see past it, couldn't breathe through it. My brothers saved me. They showed up every update. They didn't try to fix me. They were just there. He paused. I want to do the same for you. Give you what I wish someone had given me when I needed it most. A chance, a choice, a family. Lucas looked at this man, this giant, this legend, this father who loved so fiercely it radiated off him like heat. What if you change your mind? What if you decide you don't want me anymore? Marcus smiled, sad and fierce and certain. Then I'll find you the way I found you in that blizzard, as many times as it takes for the rest of my life. For the first time in 4 years, Lucas Bennett allowed himself to hope. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll try. Marcus squeezed his hand. That's all I ask, son. That's all anyone can ask. Dr. Rivera found Marcus in the hallway an hour later. Mr. Blackwood, I need to tell you about the boy who saved your daughter. Marcus turned, waited. His name is Lucas Bennett. He's 11 years old. When he arrived, his core temperature was 28 degrees Celsius. Severe frostbite on both feet, his hands, parts of his face, dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition that suggests he hasn't had a proper meal in months. The doctor paused. But he will live. His feet were badly damaged. We managed to save them, but full recovery will take months of rehabilitation. Maybe longer. Marcus exhaled. Thank God. There's something else you should know. Marcus waited. This boy has no records, no medical history, no emergency contacts. When we ran his description through the system, we found a missing person report from 2 years ago. Foster care runaway. The family he ran from was investigated for child labor violations 6 months after he disappeared. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He's been living on the streets for 2 years. An 11-year-old child, homeless, surviving alone through Minnesota winters. And he used what little he had to save your daughter. Marcus looked through the window at Lucas, small, thin, battered by a life that had shown him no mercy. And still he had walked 9 miles to save a stranger. Social worker will be here tomorrow, Dr. Rivera continued. They want to place him back in foster care. No. The word came out hard, final. Not a request, not a negotiation. Mr. Blackwood, it's not that simple. There are procedures, legal requirements. Marcus turned to face her. His eyes were red from crying, but there was iron in them now. Doctor, I have 200 brothers who will stand between that boy and anyone who tries to take him somewhere he doesn't want to go. I have lawyers, I have resources, and I have a debt I will spend the rest of my life repaying. He looked back at Lucas. That boy saved my daughter, saved my mother, gave everything he had for people he didn't know. And you're telling me the system wants to put him back in the same machine that failed him so completely he chose to live in a drainage pipe rather than ask for help? Marcus's voice dropped, but the intensity doubled. He's mine now, do you understand? He's mine and nobody is taking him anywhere. Dr. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll make some calls, see what I can do. Thank you. She walked away. Marcus stayed at the window, watching his son sleep. 3 days passed. Lucas spent them in a haze of pain medication and confusion. Physical therapists came and went. Nurses checked his vitals. Doctors examined his feet and shook their heads and said words like permanent damage and extensive rehabilitation and lucky to be alive. Sophie visited on the second day, in a wheelchair, still weak but alive, her green eyes bright with something Lucas could not name. She did not say much, just held his hand and smiled and said thank you over and over until Marcus gently told her Lucas needed rest. But before she left, she leaned close and whispered, I told Daddy you're my brother now. He said, okay, so you have to get better because brothers don't leave. Lucas watched her wheel away and felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen solid for 4 years. Margaret came on the 3rd day, stitches on her forehead, walking with a cane. She sat beside his bed and cried and called him her angel and said she owed him a debt she could never repay. Lucas did not know what to say, so he said nothing. Just let her hold his hand and cry, and eventually leave when the emotions became too much. Marcus came every day. Sometimes he talked, sometimes he just sat. Always he was there, present, solid, real. On the 4th day, the social worker arrived. Her name was Janet Morrison. She was young, maybe 30. She wore a suit that was trying too hard to look professional and carried a briefcase that was trying too hard to look important. She sat in the chair beside Lucas's bed and smiled a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Lucas, my name is Janet. I'm here to help you." Lucas said nothing. He had heard this before, from social workers who put him with Dale Morrison, from case managers who never followed up, from people who said they wanted to help and then disappeared. "I understand you've been through a very traumatic experience. What you did was incredibly brave. But now we need to think about what's best for your future." "I want to stay with Sophie's dad." Janet's smile tightened. "I understand you've bonded with the Blackwood family, but there are procedures we have to follow. You're a ward of the state. We have a legal obligation to place you in a proper foster home. Like the proper foster home you placed me in before, with Dale Morrison." Janet flinched. "That was an unfortunate situation. But we've learned from that. We have better screening now, better families. I want to stay with Marcus." "Lucas, you've only known him for 4 days. I've known him long enough. He shows up. Nobody else did." The door opened. Marcus walked in. Behind him, Bear and Carol and a dozen other members of the Hells Angels. They filled the room, filled the doorway. Their presence was not threatening, but it was absolute. Janet stood. "This is highly irregular." Marcus's voice was calm. "This is family. Every person in this room will testify to Lucas's character. Every person will advocate for him. Every person will fight to keep him safe. Mr. Blackwood, you can't just intimidate." "I'm not intimidating anyone. I'm showing you that Lucas has what he's never had before. People who will show up for him, people who will fight for him, people who won't abandon him." Janet looked around the room, at the leather-clad giants, at the woman with fierce eyes, at the community that had formed around one 11-year-old boy in 4 days. She looked back at Lucas. "Lucas, is this what you want?" Lucas met her eyes. "Yes." "You understand that Mr. Blackwood has to pass a home study, background checks, that this process could take months?" "I understand. And if something goes wrong, if he can't pass the requirements, you'll have to accept placement elsewhere?" Lucas looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back, and in that look was a promise stronger than words. "He'll pass," Lucas said. Janet sighed, closed her briefcase, stood. "I'll start the paperwork. But Mr. Blackwood, understand this. If anything, and I mean anything, suggests that this placement is not in Lucas's best interest, I will remove him immediately. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." She left. The tension in the room released like air from a balloon. Bear laughed, a big booming sound. "Well, that went well." Marcus sat beside Lucas. "You okay?" Lucas nodded, could not speak, could not process that a dozen people had just shown up for him, that Marcus had faced down the system for him, that someone was fighting to keep him. "Thank you," he finally managed. Marcus squeezed his shoulder. "That's what family does, son. We show up." 3 weeks later, Lucas stood in the Hells Angels clubhouse. Stood was the wrong word. He was in a wheelchair. His feet were healing, but he could not walk yet, would not be able to walk for another month at least. But he was there, and that was what mattered. The clubhouse was not what he expected. He had imagined something dark, dangerous, a place of shadows and secrets. What he found was a building that looked like a cross between a garage and a family restaurant. The main room had a bar along one wall, pool tables in the center, comfortable couches arranged around a television, and photographs on the walls, not of motorcycles or skulls, of people, families, weddings, birthdays, babies held by men with tattoos and tears in their eyes. "It's not what you expected," Marcus said. "No, it's not. Most people think we're criminals, thugs, monsters." Marcus shrugged. "Some of us have been those things. But this place is where we become something better, where we find family when blood family fails us." He put a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "You fit right in, kid." The front door burst open. "He's here, the little legend himself." Bear strode into the room, even bigger than Marcus, beard to his chest, arms covered in tattoos, a grin too large for his face. He grabbed Lucas's hand and shook it, hard. "Lucas Bennett, I'm Bear, Sergeant at Arms, which means I break things and occasionally people. But mostly I cook. You hungry? I make a mean bacon and egg sandwich." Before Lucas could answer, Bear was dragging his wheelchair toward the kitchen. The boys have been dying to meet you. Word spread fast. 9 miles through the Halloween blizzard with Sophie on your back. That's superhero stuff, kid. Carol emerged from the kitchen. Tall, gray hair, forearms that suggested she could bench press Lucas without trying. Bear, let him breathe. She approached Lucas with careful slowness, the way you approach a wounded animal. I'm Carol, Bear's wife, also the only person in this building with any sense. She smiled. It transformed her face, made her look kind instead of fierce. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Better, still tired, but better. Good. We got a room set on up for you, just a temporary until Marcus gets the paperwork sorted. But it's warm and safe and nobody will bother you. A room, for him. Lucas did not know what to say. Over the next few hours, he learned what family meant. Every member of the Duluth chapter appeared, then members from other chapters. St. Paul, Minneapolis, Fargo. They came with gifts, a new jacket, boots that actually fit, comic books, a sleeping bag for his new room, though Carol insisted he would not need it. They came with stories, tales of their own close calls, their own brushes with death, their own moments of impossible survival. They came with respect. Lucas had never experienced anything like it. On the streets, he was invisible. Here he was seen, acknowledged, valued. By evening, Lucas was exhausted, but it was a good exhaustion. The exhaustion that came from being surrounded by people instead of alone. Marcus guided him to a small room at the end of a hallway, clean bed, desk with a lamp, window looking out over rows of motorcycles. This is mine? Lucas asked. For now. Until we get you settled at my place proper. Lucas looked around the room, this tiny space that was more than he had owned in years. Wait by him. The word came out before he could stop it. Why are you doing all this? The truth, not the speech about family. The real reason. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the snow. When Sarah died, I made a vow. I swore that Sophie would never know pain, that I would protect her from everything. He turned back to Lucas. I failed. The blizzard happened and I wasn't there and she almost died. That was my failure. My fault. That wasn't... Let me finish. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. You were there when I wasn't. You protected her when I couldn't. You gave me back the only two people I have left in this world. My mother, my daughter. He crossed the room, put his hands on Lucas's shoulders. You gave everything to save them. I can never repay that, but I want to. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you deserve it, because every child deserves someone who will fight for them. Marcus's voice dropped to almost a whisper. And because my daughter wants a brother, and I've never been able to say no to her. Lucas looked at this man, this giant, this legend, this father who loved so fiercely it hurt to witness. What if I'm bad at being a brother? I've never done it before. Marcus smiled. Neither had I before I was a father. You figure it out as you go. That's how family works. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. He had spent 2 years building walls, trusting no one, surviving alone. Maybe it was time to let someone in. Okay, Lucas said. Okay, I believe you. Marcus pulled him into a hug, gentle and fierce at the same time. Welcome to the family, son. For real this time. Lucas buried his face in Marcus's chest and cried. Not tears of sadness, not tears of fear. For the first time in 4 years, Lucas Bennett cried tears of joy. The vest ceremony happened 3 weeks later. 307 people filled the clubhouse. They lined the walls. They spilled out into the parking lot where speakers carried the sound outside. Members of the Hells Angels from chapters across Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and Michigan. Men and women who had driven through the night, through what remained of the blizzard, through ice and snow and danger, for him. Lucas sat in his wheelchair at the front of the room, flanked by Marcus on one side and Bear on the other. He looked at the sea of leather and denim, at the tattoos and beards, at the faces that looked like they had been carved from stone. These were dangerous people by any measure he had learned on the streets. But when he entered the room, every single one of them stood up. The sound was like thunder. 300 people rising in unison. The scrape of chairs, the creak of leather. A wave of noise that washed over Lucas and left him frozen in place. "They're standing for you," Marcus murmured. "Accept it." Lucas did not know how to accept it, did not know what to do with his hands or his eyes. He had spent 2 years learning to be invisible. Now 300 people were looking directly at him. It was the most terrifying moment of his life, and somehow the most wonderful. Marcus took his place at a podium. The room fell silent. "Brothers and sisters," his voice carried without amplification, deep, certain. "We gather today to honor something rare, something most of us have spent our lives searching for without knowing its name." He turned to look at Lucas. "We gather to honor true courage." Marcus told the story, not rushed, not dramatic, just the facts. The car in the ditch, the broken window, the 9 miles, the 17 falls, the promise to a 6-year-old girl. Lucas Bennett was 11 years old, homeless. He had nothing, no family, no shelter, no resources. He had every reason to walk past that car, to save himself, to let someone else handle it. Marcus's voice cracked. He paused, composed himself. He didn't. Instead, he broke the window with his own boot. He wrapped my mother in every piece of fabric he could find. He put my daughter on his back, and he walked 9 miles through a blizzard that killed 23 people, in temperatures that froze birds in mid-flight, with feet so damaged by frostbite that doctors thought he would lose them. The room was absolutely silent. He walked because he made a promise. My daughter, delirious with cold, asked him not to leave her, and he promised he wouldn't. Marcus's eyes glistened. He fell 17 times. 17 times he hit the ground, exhausted, frozen, dying, and 17 times he got back up, because he had made a promise to a little girl he had never met. Marcus turned to face Lucas directly. "Lucas Bennett, you saved my daughter's life. You saved my mother's life. You reminded every person in this room why we ride, why we fight, why we call each other family." His voice rang out. "Because family is not blood. Family is showing up. Family is keeping promises. Family is carrying someone through the darkness when everything in you screams to stop." Bear stepped forward, carrying something in his hands. Something made of leather, black and heavy with patches. Marcus took it. "This is a prospect vest, modified. The patches are different. You're not old enough to be a full member. But this vest marks you as one of us. As family, as someone under the protection of every brother and sister in this room, in this state, in this country." He held out the vest. "You don't have to accept it. This is a choice. It will always be a choice. But if you want a family, if you want people who will show up for you, who will fight for you, who will never abandon you, this is what we're offering." Lucas stared at the vest, thought about his mother, about her promise that everything would be okay, thought about his father, about the promise broken so completely it shattered his ability to believe in promises at all, thought about Sophie, about the promise that almost killed him. Some promises were meant to be broken. Some promises were meant to change everything. Lucas stood up from his wheelchair. It was the first time he had stood in 3 weeks. His feet screamed, his legs shook. But he stood. The room erupted. 300 voices raised in a roar that shook the windows. 300 pairs of hands clapping, stomping, pounding on anything within reach. Lucas walked to Bear. Each step agony, each step worth it. He took the vest. The roar doubled. Lucas slipped the vest over his shoulders. It was heavy, warm. It smelled like leather and oil and hope. It felt like belonging. Marcus wrapped an arm around him, pulled him into a hug that was gentle and fierce at the same time. "Welcome to the family, son. For real this time." Lucas buried his face in Marcus's chest and let the tears come. Good tears. Happy tears. The kind of tears that meant you were home. 5 years passed like water through fingers. Lucas stood at the podium in Duluth East High School's auditorium. 16 years old now, 6 inches taller, shoulders broad, the feral watchfulness gone from his eyes, replaced by quiet confidence. He smiled easily now, laughed often, still cried at sad movies though he denied it. He was still healing, would probably always be healing. But he was alive. He was loved. And today he was about to tell his story. The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, city officials, and in the back, 47 men and women in leather vests, drawing nervous glances from the more conventional attendees. Lucas smiled at them, his family. 5 years ago, he began, his voice steady, I was living in a drainage pipe under the Blatnik Bridge. The auditorium went silent. I was 11 years old. My mother had died 4 years before. My father abandoned me 3 years before. I spent 14 months in a foster home where I was treated as slave labor before running away. He paused. I had no family, no friends, no hope. I was invisible. Another pause, letting the words sink in. Then a blizzard came, and I found a car in a ditch. Inside was a girl named Sophie. She was 6 years old and dying. She asked me to promise not to leave her. Lucas looked at the leather-clad section in the back. Marcus sat with Bear on one side and Carol on the other. In the front row, Sophie bounced with barely contained excitement. 11 years old now. Healthy after successful heart surgery 2 years prior. I kept that promise. It nearly killed me, but I kept it. He gestured to the back. Those people who are making some of you nervous are my family. Not by blood, by choice. They showed up for me when I had nothing. They taught me that family is not about DNA. It's about showing up. It's about keeping promises. It's about carrying each other through the darkness. Lucas took a deep breath. Today I'm announcing something we've been working on for 2 years. It's called the 9 Mile Foundation. A logo appeared on the screen behind him. A road stretching into snow. A small figure walking. A larger figure waiting in the distance. The 9 Mile Foundation is dedicated to finding and helping homeless children across Minnesota. Not just feeding them, not just sheltering them temporarily, finding them families, real families, people who will show up for them the way my family showed up for me. Photographs appeared on the screen. Children with new families, children in graduation caps, children smiling with expressions of disbelief and joy. In the past 6 months, we've placed 11 children with families, 11 kids who were living on the streets, invisible, forgotten, just like I was. 11 kids who now have homes and schools and futures. Lucas outlined the foundation's plans, expansion to other states, partnerships with social services, a network of motorcycle clubs across the country who had pledged to participate. When he finished, the auditorium erupted. The leather-clad section stood first. Then the rest of the audience rose, section by section, until the entire room was on its feet. Lucas accepted the ovation, allowed himself a moment of pride. He had come so far, from a drainage pipe to a stage, from invisible to seen, from alone to surrounded by family, and he was just getting started. After the presentation, as the crowd dispersed, a woman approached one of the volunteers. She was thin, worn, eyes haunted by things Lucas recognized. Beside her stood a boy, maybe 9 years old, dirty, ragged, eyes holding that same feral watchfulness Lucas remembered from his own reflection. Lucas noticed them immediately. He crossed the room and crouched in front of the boy, bringing himself to eye level. "Hey, I'm Lucas. What's your name?" The boy said nothing, just stared, waiting for the line, waiting for the hurt. His mother spoke instead, her voice barely a whisper. "His name is Daniel. I saw the news about what you did, what you're doing. I thought maybe you could help." She paused, gathered courage. "I can't take care of him anymore. I'm sick, and he deserves better." Lucas looked at Daniel, at the walls in his eyes, the same walls Lucas had built, the same walls 1,000 homeless children had built. "Daniel," Lucas said softly, "I know you are scared. I know you don't trust me. You have no reason to. But I promise you, we're going to help, whatever you need. A home, a family, a chance, it's yours." Daniel stared at him, silent, watchful. Finally he spoke. "Why? Why would you help me?" Lucas smiled, sad and warm at the same time. "Because someone helped me once, when I was just like you, invisible, forgotten, alone." He placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder, "And I promised I would spend the rest of my life paying it forward." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, the walls began to crack. Will you promise not to leave me? Lucas's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in a single breath. He saw himself in this boy, saw every cold night and empty promise and broken trust, saw every moment of believing that no one would ever come, and he saw what came after. The family that found him, the love that saved him, the life that grew from impossible soil. I promise, Lucas said, I will never leave you. Behind him, Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. Sophie took his hand. Carol appeared in the doorway, wiping tears from her cheeks. And in that moment, surrounded by the family he had found and the family he was building, Lucas Bennett understood. His mother had been right all along. Everything would be okay. Not because the universe was kind, not because suffering had a purpose, but because people chose to show up for each other, because they carried each other through the darkness, because they kept their promises. That was what the 9 Mile Foundation was about. That was what family was about. That was what love was about. 20 years later, the headline read, 9 Mile Foundation celebrates 20th anniversary, 2,347 children placed with families. Below the headline, a photograph showed a man in his mid-30s at a podium. Kind eyes, a jaw that looked remarkably like Marcus Blackwood, who had passed peacefully 3 years prior. The man was Lucas Bennett. Beside him stood a woman in her late 20s with a medical badge, Dr. Sophie Blackwood, cardiac surgeon, dedicating her life to helping children with heart conditions. Behind them, a banner read, "Because family is a choice." In the audience sat hundreds of children who had found families through the foundation. Children who had been invisible, forgotten, saved not by blood, but by love, by the simple radical act of showing up. Lucas looked out at the crowd, at the faces of children who had walked their own 9 miles, who had found their own families, who had learned that being alone was not the same as being unwanted. Thank you for being here, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed auditorium. Thank you for believing that every child deserves a family. Thank you for proving every single day that the world can be better than it is. He paused, smiled, let the tears fall. My mother used to tell me that everything would be okay. For a long time, I thought she was wrong. But standing here today, looking at all of you, I finally understand what she meant. His voice grew stronger. Everything is okay. Not because the universe is kind, not because suffering has a purpose, but because we choose to show up for each other, because we carry each other through the darkness, because we keep our promises. He raised his hand, a fist pressed to his heart, then extended outward, the foundation's symbol. Here's to the next 20 years. Here's to the next 2,000 children. Here's to everyone who has ever felt invisible and learned that they matter. Here's to never walking alone. The auditorium erupted, 2,000 voices raised as one. Lucas stood in the center of it all, surrounded by love, filled with purpose, alive. His mother had been right. Everything was okay. The final image on the screen showed Lucas walking through snow. Behind him, hundreds of footprints, the people he had saved, the family he had built, the legacy he had created. He was not alone anymore. He would never be alone again. And somewhere in the wind, if you listened closely, you could almost hear 3 voices. Emma Bennett whispering, "I knew you would make it, baby." Marcus Blackwood saying, "You made good on that promise, son." And a young Sophie laughing, "I told you he could be my brother." Lucas smiled, looked at Daniel, now 29 and running the Foundation's Chicago chapter. Looked at the thousands of children who had found their way home. Some journeys are measured in miles. Some are measured in lives changed. Lucas Bennett's journey was measured in both. And it started with a simple promise. I will never leave you. He never did. The story of Lucas Bennett and Marcus Blackwood. A homeless boy and a broken father. 9 miles through hell. A promise kept. And 2,347 children who learned that family is not blood. Family is showing up. Family is keeping promises. Family is carrying each other through the darkness, every single time.